let me thank Nigel Cameron and Michael Krasny and the CBC for putting on this debate, which I think has been, I hope you'll find, a useful and clarifying experience. Let me just say, to really sum up, I think Nigel Cameron's position tries to say, well, look, it's just a matter of being human, and that's really what counts with us. And we don't want to get into anything like looking at the kinds of characteristics that beings have. That's a bad way to go. But I think that that's really a very unsatisfactory answer unless you really are just appealing to some sort of religious doctrine. In other words, just to say, well, you know, we should just take that as a fact. Why is that morally significant, simply being human? I think you have to say something more about that. We want to say that it's worse to kill a human being than it is to kill a cabbage, say, to take an extreme example of a being that's not even conscious. And I certainly say, as I said, I think it's worse to kill a human being than it is to kill a chicken or a fish, which are beings that can suffer pain, but I don't think have the kind of self-awareness that I was talking about. And I think you have to say why. And I don't think you can just say because they're human, because of their human nature, or because they're one of us. Those are question-begging answers. I think that really, you know, the reason that Dr. Cameron is defending this is, as he's made clear, because of his Christian beliefs, which, you know, tell him that every human has an immortal soul or something like that, or is made in the image of God, or that God granted us dominion over the animals but not over the humans. And this is really what lies behind it. And, you know, I mean, he's obviously free to hold those beliefs, but I have to say they're not my beliefs, and I don't think they're beliefs that are persuasive to others who don't share that view and who are looking for some different kind of answer. Now, one reason why this is not such a simple answer anyway is that even if you say, well, we want to say they're one of us, part of our community, there's a whole lot of different questions that you have to answer about boundary lines. And I didn't find Dr. Cameron's answers very satisfactory in that way. You have to answer questions about the boundary lines between those of us with capacities and those of us without them. I didn't find his answer on the anencephalic really satisfactory. But you have to also say, why is this difference between humans and non-humans so important? What about at the very beginning of life? Does he want to say that it's as wrong to destroy a single-celled embryo as it is to kill one of us? That is, a being with a full awareness of their life and a desire to go on living. And why should that be so? Because even at the very beginning of the creation of life, there's still boundaries to be drawn. What is the crucial moment supposed to be when you become one of us? Is it when the sperm penetrates the outside of the layer of the egg, or only when the genetic material of the egg and sperm fuse? Why would you choose those boundaries? What is supposed to make a difference in these sorts of cases? What about the fact that we have the capacity to create more lives by dividing the embryos? Should we do that? Or by creating new embryos, by taking a nucleus from our own bodies perhaps and implanting it into another one? Does every cell in our body then somehow have the capacity for life, and is that also to become one of us? And then there are these boundaries and decisions about between acts and omissions that I've been talking about. Why should you think that it's required by this idea of human dignity and the wider human community? It's required at all costs to avoid intentionally ending a life by active means, but you're allowed to withdraw a respirator. We didn't really get onto this in detail, but certainly most people think that you are allowed to withdraw a respirator from someone, for example, who is, you know, suffering from terminal illness and will only live a few days or a week or two, and who doesn't feel that their life has anything that is worthwhile. Why should that not count as ending a life and is just as contrary to human dignity as actually giving a lethal injection? What about the case of brain death? We haven't had a response from Dr. Cameron on whether he considers that people whose brains have irreversibly ceased to function but whose hearts are still beating and whose bodies are warm are one of us, are members of the human community or not. So there are all these difficult decisions, and the growth in medical technology just makes them more difficult. And that's why I think it's not enough to really just say, well, it's a matter of who is the wider human community. It's something we need to think about a lot more. And let me just finish with one final point I was reminded of when Dr. Cameron referred to the wider global community right at the end. In fact, if we're concerned about human dignity and saving lives, it's very easy for us to save lives at very little cost, if only we would really take seriously this idea that all human life is equally worth living, or even my more limited version, that the lives of all human beings who want to go on living is equally worth living. Because we know that there are close to 10,000 children dying every day from poverty-related causes. And surely every time we go out to a restaurant, every time we spend money on new clothes or CDs or going to the theatre, we could be donating that money to help save these people's lives. But the very people who are strongly against the idea of allowing, for example, voluntary euthanasia, are generally not to be heard in the forefront of those who are saying we must do a lot more, we must really get serious about addressing these issues and not give the token amount that the United States, for example, gives, the lowest of all the economically developed nations, to foreign aid, which ought to be a matter of national shame that people who are concerned about the dignity of human life should be speaking against. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Singer. We'll now hear concluding remarks from Dr. Cameron.